Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Zara and today I am going to be doing a review of The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. This is the first book in the Gentleman Bastard series. I'm not even really going to bother doing a summary of what this book is about because I feel like everybody has read it. But it's essentially a high stakes heist story where we're following a bunch of different characters as they try to pull off their kind of biggest con. It's very much an adventure book and there's a lot happening, there's flashbacks. And this was a book that I wouldn't say I had like super high expectations for. I'm not going to lie though, I did have some expectations because pretty much every video that I had watched of this book in the past reviewing it was insanely positive. Some people talked about it in the same vein as The First Law by Joe Abercrombie, which I think was a lot of people's first mistake, to be honest, because it is nothing like First Law. Let's talk about what I liked about this book, and then we'll talk about what I didn't like about this book, because there were quite a few things that really did not mesh well with me. No hate to anybody who loved this book. I know a lot of people really passionately love this book, so if you did and you don't want to hear any critiques about it, feel free to not watch this video. But if you want to just genuinely hear what my thoughts were, then please do keep watching. So in terms of what I liked the very vivid and immersive world. This is a novel that is set in a place called Camor, which I believe is inspired by Venice. And it's filled with, you know, kind of like crumbling architecture, there's canals, and you can kind of feel that there's this like underlying sense of danger. And from what I understand, it's kind of influenced by the Renaissance as well, which if any of you've watched my channel even for a small while, you'll know that's like one of my favorite periods in history. I've read pretty much everything you could read about that period of history. So I was quite excited to see that reflected in this book. I think Lynch did a pretty decent job. He has a real kind of attention to detail that brings this world to life, makes it feel very gritty, vibrant and alive, which I really appreciated. And to be honest with you, that's pretty much all I really liked about this book. Everything else kind of has positives, but also like a negative side to them. And yeah, I think let's jump into what I didn't like about this book. I have a big problem with high stories, which is that I think once you've read like a couple of high stories, you've kind of read them all. I think it's quite hard to really create like an original high story that doesn't feel predictable. My favorite high story is The Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo. And that is a duology that I'd like to reread because I want to see if I really did love the book or whether I'm more just being like, you know, when you kind of see something through rose-tinted glasses. I don't think that is my feeling because I just really love those books. But I think with high stories, like I've tried a few since then, to not much success, to be honest, and I was kind of hoping this book would change that, but it really didn't. The cons are very much elaborate, but I think they're overly elaborate to the point where it's a bit nonsensical. I liked kind of reading Locke manipulate nobles with his charm and deceiving them. Like I definitely think that's a highlight. But I think because the book is so long and the pacing is so off, which I'll come on to in a second, I kind of lost interest at some point where I'm not really bought into this anymore and I don't really care whether you win or not. And I think that's a problem. So that was one issue that I had. One of the biggest issues that I had was the pacing. Now, I've said this many times before, I don't mind slow books. In fact, some of my favourite books of all time are incredibly slow. If anything, I like them. I don't mind it. This book has a really slow start. And then the middle of the book is really long and it's unusually long. And then the ending is really rushed. And I think this is kind of what really set the tone of the book for me. It does pick up in the second half, but the beginning is really sluggish. He spends a lot of time on the world building and the backstory, often putting us through really long flashbacks that interrupt the main narrative. And I personally do not like that. I've said this before, I don't like flashbacks generally. I think it's extremely hard to do. And I don't think Lynch got the balance right, in my opinion, because as soon as we get to a bit that's really interesting in the present day, it gets completely interrupted by a flashback that I don't really care about and I just want to know what's happening in the main story. Some of these could have been either removed or just massively streamlined to increase the momentum. The middle section drags a lot. There, as I mentioned, there's kind of these constant interruptions that, while they're impressive in detail, feel extraordinarily excessive and they disrupt the pacing and kind of throw you off as the reader. This brings me on to my next critique, which is the overuse of flashbacks. I get wanting to give us Locke's backstory, but I honestly think the first book should have just been Locke as a kid, and we see Locke kind of get to the point where then this book really starts, right? Which is when the con starts. It leans too heavily on the flashbacks, sometimes placing them at moments that really kill the tension, as I kind of alluded to earlier. For example, we'll have moments that are really high stakes, and then the story will suddenly shift to Locke's childhood, completely breaking the momentum. This is what I mean. Flashbacks are really, really, really hard to do. And I haven't read many authors who managed to do it that well, to be honest, but this was just painful. It was really, really, really painful. The next thing that I didn't like was the dialogue. I love sharp, witty dialogue generally, but it kind of felt a bit cringe, if I'm being honest. And all the characters read the same. Jean, Locke, they're both the same character. They read exactly the same way. They speak exactly the same way, which makes it hard for me as the reader to be able to differentiate who is saying what. The banter between the characters, I liked in moments, but I don't know, it just felt a bit forced. It felt a bit cringe. I wasn't really buying into the friendship, if I'm being completely honest. I know a lot of people love Locke and Jean, but I'm not that bothered. I didn't dislike them, but I'm not that bothered, if I'm being completely honest. And I know I'm going to get some hate for that probably, but I'm okay with that. Keeping on the topic of characters, what is up with the female characters in this book? Very odd, because this is a world where women can actually ascend to genuinely powerful positions in society, and yet none of the female characters actually really have any depth or have any actual stake in the story. There is one character that dies in the book, and I was actually so excited to see where that character was going to go, and then she was literally just killed off for like very little reason. Like, it was such a poor reason to kill this character off, in my opinion. And I felt kind of empty after that character died because I was so excited to see where her story was going to go. Considering how much he gives depth to the male relationships in this book, it would have been really nice to see some male-female relationships or some female-female relationships, but we just didn't get any of that, unfortunately. And I think that's such a missed opportunity, especially given the setting and the historical context of this world, where women can actually be in powerful positions. It kind of didn't make sense to me, kind of just a bit of a waste, to be honest. The next thing that I didn't like, sorry folks, I know many of you are probably going to find this video quite painful. The next thing that I didn't like was the villain. Super underwhelming. Super underwhelming. Definitely a very menacing character. He's obviously quite intelligent, but his motivations for doing what he does are so thin. His backstory, which I won't talk about because I don't want this to have any spoilers, lacks any emotional weight compared to the damage that he actually causes. He's just the classic mysterious and ruthless villain, but lacks any actual depth beyond the revenge plot, in my opinion. There's another villain as well called the Bonds Mage, who, while is also powerful, I just feel like he's gotten rid of so easily, and he's just gone like way too soon. And for a supposedly terrifying figure, his defeat is like really anticlimactic and again kind of feels like a really big missed opportunity, in my opinion. There were some really great ideas in this book, but I feel like they weren't given the time and the attention that they should have gotten, and that's what made this quite hard to read in places. The next thing that I didn't like was the ending. I kind of alluded to this when I talked about the pacing, but after so much build up, the resolution just happens so quickly. When we get to the ending, like, everybody just moves on. Locke and Jean, you know, do their thing, but the aftermath of like what's just happened like feels severely underexplored. Now, it could be the case that he's going to explore that more in the second book, but it would have been good to have had a bit of time in this book for the characters to kind of come to terms with what's just happened, but we don't really get any of that, and it kind of feels a bit random, to be honest. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Like, there was some stuff that I liked, there were things that I liked the idea of, but then when it came to actually executing on them, I think there was a lot to be desired. I think Lynch is a really good world builder, and I think he's got, like I said, like, I think there's certain things that he does pretty decently. But I think this book was almost trying to do too much. It was trying to fit too many things in. And I think it should have been drastically simplified. And I think the character should have been given a bit more depth, and there should have been a broader range of characters, in my opinion, rather than just Locke and Jean. It was just super underwhelming. I gave this book like a 3 stars when I first read it, but I think it's more like a 2.5, which is like very, very average. Like I wouldn't say it's below average. I just think it's very, very average. And I don't think it necessarily should get the amount of hype that it does get for some reason. Like I really don't get it, to be honest. Like there's definitely instances where I've read a book and I'm like, this is just not for me, and I get why other people love it. I don't get why people love this book so much. Like I really don't. I've heard very mixed things about the next books. I know this series is not finished because I believe the author has been going through some personal stuff, which really sucks. But I was planning to read the entire series, but I don't think I am going to now. I don't think I'm going to bother on with the series. But let me know down below in the comments if what your perspective is on that, because I'm sure other people might be interested in hearing. If not, at least I might have a frame of reference for the future, for whether I decide to pick this up in the future. But at least for now, I have zero intent on picking this up because it was just very meh, to be honest. And I honestly think those are kind of like the worst books, because I don't think I'll ever think about this book ever again, which is such a shame because there was promise, but it just didn't deliver. Yeah. I'm curious if anybody feels the same way about me, because I feel like everybody loves this book and I'm like the weird one who doesn't, but I'm also okay with that. So let me know down below in the comments what your thoughts are on this book and if you agree with anything that I said, and I will see you there. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. And if you like this type of content, then do please consider subscribing as well. Thanks for watching, folks. Stay safe, take care, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye.